Welcome to Now for Someone Completely Interesting. No, don't adjust your volume or anything like that. I am your host, Ben Poulin, and my voice is just a little bit off today thanks to my coaching skills last night with the Elk Point Senior Men's Hockey Team, which is limited to just yelling at players and refs. So, but we're going to do this podcast anyways because we postponed it a few times. So there's been a few guests I've had on this podcast that I felt I've gotten to know over the years, and yet somehow they always seem to have a story about them that surprises me, and Garth here is no exception. As long as I've known him, he's been an educator, a family man, a fellow beer connoisseur, and even though he has poor taste in hockey teams, we're both hockey fans. We've won trivia contests together, we've rang in the new year a few times, and lately he's been teaching me how to make wine. Quiet with a witty sense of humor, Garth Finlay has an eclectic range of interests and even a couple of careers. So I'm finding out for the first time about some of these. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring him on. Just one of the many reasons, I should add. I'm pleased to welcome someone completely interesting, Garth Finlay.
Thanks, Ben. And you sound great today, by the way.
In my head, I sound like the guy that does the movie previews.
Oh, yeah, it's slick for sure.
In a world where Ben Poulin records podcasts. But we keep, everybody's been sick lately and we've been postponing. I feel fine. I just don't sound fine. So.
Yeah, and I caught it just a little bit before you, and so I understand where you're coming from.
So the best part is, though, it's you're going to do most of the talking here on in. So but let's get into it a little bit. Garth, I've only known you for a few years, and I know we get along well. We have a lot of the same interests, but let's learn a little bit more about you. Maybe a little bit where you grew up and how you grew up over the years, because you didn't necessarily just stay in one spot.
No, my dad worked for the power company, and so we moved around a lot. They lived in Wetaskiwin and then moved to Rocky Ford, and that's where I was born, just outside of Calgary. From there, we moved to Morinville. I was in Boyle for a few years, and then when I was in grade 8, we moved down to High River, and that's kind of where I spent the rest of my young adult life anyways, down southern Alberta.
So you would have finished your junior high school down in High River.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned in the intro, you're in education, teacher. I think you were a principal,
assistant principal at St. Paul Elementary. That's right.
Okay, so you've obviously had an extensive career in that, but that's not necessarily where you went out of high school to get into. This was a journey on its own.
Yeah. Well, out of high school, I thought that I had visions of what I wanted to do. I thought, maybe I'd be an accountant or something like that. And so I went to SAIT and got my business, general business diploma out of SAIT because I realized when I was at the school there that I didn't want to be an accountant. I thought it maybe wasn't as an exciting of a job as I thought it would be. So yeah, I graduated SAIT. I went to work at the UFA. Actually, I worked at the UFA throughout a couple of summers, like in the lumber yard. Mm-hmm. So I went down, I got a job there out of college and got promoted to a sales rep, which I feel like I am not a sales rep at all. And then especially at the UFA, like I did not grow up on a farm.
Right.
Like I don't have a high aptitude for mechanics or tools or working with my hands. that's where I was.
Something else we have in common.
Yeah, so I was there for a couple of years and just trying to find myself. A buddy and I decided to travel to Europe for a few months. And that brought me back. When I came back to Alberta, I went into the oil patch. Now that I think about it, like that's another one of those jobs where you have to like be good with tools and working with your hands and stuff. So I didn't last there very long. I got a job at Big Rock Brewery.
Now that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. It was fun, right? It was a fun job. I did lots of different things there. Right. I like worked on the bottling line. Like we would clean the bottles and then send that out to get filled up with beer. I worked on the keg machine, and then I got my big promotion at Big Rock was I got to operate the canning machine.
Right.
Which it's really interesting. Like we could fill up 550 cans of beer in a minute.
Wow.
That was fun. But it was just like I realized, other than taking free beer home every week, maybe it wasn't my calling either. Just,
Right.
it wasn't as fulfilling a job for me as I wanted. So from there, I went back to university.
How old were you by this time? Because it seems you've packed a lot of years into one short
Yeah. So let's
segment.
see. This has got to be around. Well, I went to Europe shortly after 9/11. I mean,
Okay.
like a couple months after. I remember that distinctly because I thought it was the craziest thing to get on a plane
Right.
a couple months after that. So that's 2001. It would have been 2002. Probably I went back to school 2003.
Okay.
Okay. So how old does that make me? My students always ask how old I am.
Yeah.
And I never tell them.
Right.
I just say I was born in 1978, which is true.
Okay.
So can you do the math there, Ben? How old was I then? That's
I'm putting you at 44.
yeah. Well, you nailed it. Yeah.
Well, 2 years older than me, so
Yeah. So I'm in my mid 20s. Anyways.
I still had to think about how old I was first and then add 2.
Yeah. So I'm in my mid 20s when I went
Right.
back to university. I got my education degree and I finished my business degree while I was down there
Oh, where did you go to school the second time?
in Lethbridge.
Lethbridge, okay.
Yeah. I had done, like, I had coached some hockey, and I had done some volunteering at like a after school boys and
Right.
girls club, and I realized that I really liked being around young kids. So that kind of brought me back to university. And when I graduated there, I got a job at a college teaching adults.
Oh,
So that's where I was. I mean, it was a rewarding job as well, and I still had that passion to work with kids when I
Right.
was when I was in Grand Prairie
okay.
at the college, working at the college there. But I've kind of fulfilled that passion through
Mm-hmm.
coaching sports and volunteering for like I ran a youth group and that sort of
Right.
stuff.
Did you meet anybody interesting when you were up in Grand Prairie?
Well, actually, yes, I did. Let's see. I was there for a few months. I went to a Tragically Hip concert.
Uh-huh.
You may have heard the story on
I
your
may have,
podcast one
yes.
other time. Yeah, and I met this charming young lady, and we met that night and we danced quite a bit, and then we went out on a couple other dates. This is January 13th that we met.
Right.
We went out on a few dates. April 1st. I do not have a taste for romance either. Like April 1st, April Fool's Day, I asked her to marry me, if you can believe it.
For some reason, if we, knowing you guys, that actually seems the most appropriate day of the year to.
Yeah, I think so. I just, the spirit moved me. And so I asked and she said yes. And then, so Missy and I ended up getting married on August 4th. So it was a whirlwind romance, and yeah,
And still going strong there too.
it's still going strong. Yeah.
So from the college, how did you end up getting back into, I guess, teaching at the younger levels that you had initially intended to?
Yeah. Well, so I was at the college for close to 10 years, I think 9 years.
Right.
And then the conservative government at the time came out with a pretty tight budget, which resulted in cutbacks at the college. So I got laid off. Was it? It sure seems like it was Valentine's Day. I do. It was right around that time, but I know that we had just shortly before that bought like our dream home. We actually bought Missy's parents' house.
Right.
And the day that we got possession of the house was the day that I officially got laid off at the college.
Jeez.
So that was a stressful time.
I
But
can imagine. Yeah.
yeah, but looking back on it, I think it was kind of a blessing because I kind of reevaluated my life and realized that part of like working with kids and was missing. And so I started to look for teaching jobs and hopefully staying around Grand Prairie, but willing to move. I mean, we needed to move. We needed to have a job as a family.
Yeah.
So So I ended up getting a job in Mallaig, teaching in Mallaig in a grade 5-6 class, and we packed up and moved. Yeah.
How long were you in Mallaig for, teaching there, I should say?
Let's see, 6 years. I taught there for 6 years,
Right.
Before I moved into St. Paul at St. Paul Elementary here.
And you've just been in St. Paul Elementary for what, 1 year?
I'm in my second year there now.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
you've been in St. Paul for 7 years now.
I believe that's right. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Were you were an assistant principal in Mallaig? Am I right?
No, I just taught in the grade 5-6
just taught,
class
okay.
that entire time there.
But now you're an assistant principal.
That's right.
What are some of the challenges going from just teaching now to, I guess, how would you word that? Is it an administrative, bureaucratic role within the school system, or?
I guess you could say, yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely an administrative role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it, you find it challenging to kind of balance between teaching and?
Yeah, I one of the things that I appreciate about my position is that I have my foot in the classroom and my foot in the office, and so I get to experience the school in a different way than most people, even our principal or teachers, like, because I'm living in both those worlds,
Right.
In the classroom with kids and in the office with parents and running the business side of the school. It's really a full job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that something you looked at when you got into education as being something you had eyes on, I guess, in some way, or is it just something that the opportunity came up, so you said, why not try it? Or
More like the opportunity came up when I was at the college. My last 4 or 5 years at the college, I was the administrator of the program there, as well as the chairperson of our program that I taught at. So I kind of had, I was kind of aware of how that side of education ran, although it's quite different in a public school setting for sure. But the position came up at St. Paul Elementary. My kids both go there, and I knew a lot about the school, and I knew it was a kind of place that I wanted to work. So I never had my eyes on becoming an administrator at a school. I really liked teaching in the classroom.
right.
And if I would have stayed in the classroom for the rest of my career, I would have been fine with that. It's a difficult job. It's a rewarding job. But when this opportunity came up, I thought, yeah, this seems like a good fit.
Yeah.
For me and for our families. Yeah.
Now I have to ask, because you hear this all the time. People in teaching, especially teaching the elementary level, there's always some really great entertaining stories because kids are so brutally honest with life itself. Is there anything over your career as teaching with young kids that sticks out that you would feel comfortable sharing?
Well, so teaching in the upper elementary grades, the stories that you get are less. I don't know. I just think of, like, my wife works in the kindergarten class, and the stories that those kids tell you are completely unedited and entertaining as such.
Yeah.
The older kids, as we get older, we get a little more guarded, and you can kind of see that in those kids, and it's quite fun to see them live in both those worlds of the unedited and the a little more cautious. A lot of my funny stories come from teaching human sexuality, as you might imagine.
Yeah.
So if there's any of my students listening, you should turn off the podcast right now.
You've been warned.
Yeah, I remember teaching about human sexuality and how life begins.
Right.
And a student asked me how long it takes the sperm to reach the egg.
Right.
Well, that's a good question. I didn't know the answer to it, and I'm never afraid to tell the kids if I don't know.
Right.
I don't know the answer, but I'll find out for you. So I looked it up, and it was quite interesting. It takes somewhere between 24 to 48 hours is what I found. So I came back the next day and I addressed the class and I said, just to answer the question from yesterday, it takes somewhere between 24 to 48 hours for the sperm to reach the egg. And the boys that I was teaching, they couldn't believe it. They said, wow, you have to do it for that long? Yeah. So I made sure that he thanked his parents for all the commitment that they put into the birth of him.
Don't let them think any different, right? It was a lot of work. So.
That's right.
I want to go back a little bit to your education because I've heard this through other people in the community. You in extracurricular activity in sports and stuff. A sport you had mentioned to me and that's come up to my attention is you're a bit of a curler.
I am a curler. I come from a curling family.
Okay.
When I was young, like when I was in high school, I was going to be in the NHL. So
right, me too.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. I played single A hockey, and we had a good single A hockey team, but there's a few levels between midget A and the bigs. But somehow the scouts, I slipped through the scouts' fingers. Yeah. And so because I came from a curling family, I curled a lot, especially once I went back to school. So I curled on the university team, and we kind of ran the mixed social curling club afterwards. Right. And when I moved to Grand Prairie, I didn't know anyone in the town, so I had to fill my time somehow. So I joined a curling team. We actually ended up curling a lot, and I volunteered to help out with the college curling team as a coach. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I did that for. I was very, very involved in the curling club there. That was probably my most rewarding time as a curler. Like that much curling was just what a single man needed at the time. Yeah. Curling 5 nights a week, and then another couple nights at the curling club. That was really good. So I coached when I was coaching the team. We traveled all around Alberta. We had some provincial champion teams come out of that. I look back on it. I used to think, man, I must have been a really good coach. I won co-coach of the year of the Alberta, the ACAC, so Alberta Collegiate Athletic Conference. I won, the other coach and I won the co-coach of the year of that. And I was really quite full of myself. Man, I must be a good curler. I look back on it, and some of the curlers that we had were amazing. Like Carrie Ann McTaggart was one of the curlers, and she's gone on to play in numerous Canadian championships.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh, I wasn't an amazing coach. I was like present when amazing curlers curled really well. But sometimes that's a coach's job, is to recognize that.
Absolutely.
If you can carry the brooms in for the team, you're doing a really good job.
Well, there you
right?
go.
So.
I see it the same way myself coaching senior hockey. I'm pretty good at filling water bottles. And like I said,
absolutely, yeah.
As my voice says, I'm really good at yelling at referees when they don't make the right call.
Yeah.
Is coaching curling, I mean, it's pretty popular around here. And I know you're getting back into it because your name's been coming up from some of the other curlers that you're you might be a pretty good curler yourself. And would you look at with some of the younger kids around here of getting back into coaching? And
yeah, actually, it's something I did in Mallaig for the first few years. I helped out with a junior program there. I don't know. My life's taken twists and turns. I love curling. I love coaching curling. And things got busy, and I asked myself, what can I cut out right now? And it was curling. Mm-hmm. And what did I fill it up with? Probably busy kids and work. So is it something I'd like to get back into? Absolutely. My I have to go through his age. My 8-year-old, is he 8? 2013. No, he's 9 years old. 9. There you go. My 9-year-old said, "Oh, I think maybe I'd like to curl." So hearing that, I'll probably get back into it. The kids kind of run your life, right?
Yeah.
And he's my son's into baseball, and so I've been coaching baseball. If he wants to get back into curling, I'll probably volunteer in that.
It would be a good way to get sync. And I was going to say, I can see why some of those things take a back seat, because when you have kids, and you've got 2 kids, you've got Hazel and Arlo. But that brings up another thing you had mentioned too, that I asked if there's a few tidbits you wanted to talk about. You had mentioned something about Arlo's birth.
Yeah, you're right. So I sent that tidbit and I thought about it. It wasn't Arlo's. It was definitely Hazel's birth. Okay. Yeah. So Hazel's our oldest. Yeah. Right. And so we were expert parents a few months before she was born.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we had our birth plan. And one of the things Missy had said is she really wants me to, whenever she's going through her labor pains, let's talk about some of our experiences, maybe some of the traveling we've done. And, oh, that sounds like a great idea. So she's having her contraction, and I'm telling her about, remember the trip we went to Seattle and we watched the Blue Jays and this happened and that happened. Oh yeah, that was good. And then, okay, we get a little reprieve, and then, here comes the next contraction. And so I didn't realize as a new father that, the pain intensifies. Yeah. On our end, the pain doesn't intensify. We're just confused throughout all of it. So the pain intensified for Missy, and I continued to tell another travel story. She didn't want me to anymore, so the way she let me know that was a couple slaps across the face. So I got slugged. Pretty hard during the birth of Hazel, but I took the cue, and I did not continue to tell stories about our travels after that. So I learned a lot. Yeah.
Well, maybe some fathers experience the pain differently than other fathers do, but
yeah. I also remember that my feet were really sore during that time, and being the smart guy I realized that it was not my place to explain how sore my feet felt. Yeah. So it was actually a few years later. You're definitely safe to explain how sore your feet were during the birth of your child, and so I told Missy that, and I was wrong. It's not time to tell your wife your level of discomfort during labor. Yeah. She told me that every part of her body was sore except for her feet, which I told her, well, then you don't have any idea how I felt, because my feet were sore.
You got a lot of guts.
I hope there are no mothers listening right now.
There's no way most guys would get away with that. You guys have a very understanding relationship.
Oh, she's pretty amazing. Yeah, she's pretty amazing.
And I know she has a really good sense of humor too with that. Excuse me. As I mentioned earlier, you do have an eclectic array of interests. I mean, we've talked education, career paths, and sports, but some of the other things you've gotten into, winemaking that you've been teaching me. How did you get into that?
How did I get into winemaking? My dad's made wine for quite a while.
Okay.
He makes Finlay's Finest, which I'm sure I've brought a bottle of Finlay's Finest over at some point. He's quite good at it, as good as a $8 bottle of wine is. His is really good.
Yeah.
And I've always been I'm interested in what other I enjoy your podcast, Ben, because I'm interested in people that are interested in stuff, right? And so my dad's interested in making wine, and I've always kind of enjoyed watching the process and asking him questions about it. And one day Dad showed up and said, here's a bunch of winemaking stuff that I got for you. So that's how I got into winemaking.
There you go. Have at it.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. So it's been kind of fun, this process of making this batch with you, because, kind of talking through it, kind of understanding why I'm doing the steps that I'm doing. It's been helpful to do it with you.
I always find if you want to get better at something, you teach someone else how to do it, because you're a lot more careful and precise in what you're doing. I find that with coaching hockey and stuff like that. Even though, you're coaching senior men, you can't tell these guys anything because they're way better hockey players than I ever imagined I would be. But but you tend to be just a little bit more I don't know what's the right word, just careful in your thinking and how you explain things and stuff like that. So
absolutely. And coming from an elementary school, Like our school is full of experts in education, not necessarily in the content of the science that they're teaching or the social studies. And so it's true in that area as well. Like we become experts in whatever we're teaching because we're experts in teaching. But not to go back to school, but it just definitely kind of rings true with that as well.
Well, if you want to put it another way, it's like you said. I mean, you're teaching a class, and a student asks you a question, and funny as the anecdote is, but to admit you don't know, but you'll find out, makes you a better teacher.
Yeah.
Like this is how we get better. This is how we learn. And part of the best part of learning is learning how to find the answers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not just being told the answers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you haven't mentioned another one there. You've done some traveling, and I don't know if this has to do with traveling, but you had said something about the Battle of Little Bighorn. Because I'm always interested in anything historical, so I'm thinking that you went to the site of the Battle of Little Bighorn.
Well, I participated in the Battle of Little Bighorn. Yeah,
even better. Okay, let's hear this one.
So I must have been in grade. Let's see, my brother's probably in grade 11 or grade 12, so I was in like grade 9 maybe, and it was like the last big family trip we went on. My sister was going to university at the time. And like once the kids are leaving the house, you never know when all of you will get back together. Right? So we went on this big trip to Montana and Iowa. We went down to Yellowstone National Park, and on the way we stopped at this campsite, and we were kind of camping throughout. And if you've ever been on a trip with your siblings in the back of a car, with your adult siblings in the back of a hot car. I'm trying to think if we had air conditioning. We probably had air conditioning in the vehicle then, but you know, it's still a little uncomfortable. And being the youngest in the family, somehow I annoyed my siblings, especially my brother. Yeah, so we were in the bathroom at the campsite, getting ready in the morning, brushing our teeth, and the battle erupted. I remember exactly what initiated it. I was brushing my teeth in an annoying way, according to my brother. It wasn't. If anyone else was there, they would think it was completely normal. Darcy thought it was quite annoying.
Right.
And we started this. I don't even know. We were like barking back, and he's like, you know, one of those brother fights, incoherent, and it resulted in one of my two greatest triumphs, physical triumphs against my brother. Okay, so I guess to take a step back, my brother is shorter than I am. He's probably been smaller than I am. Most of our... It's okay, brother.
Oh, we have a dog that's letting us know that there's another dog outside.
Yeah, so can they still hear me fine?
I can still hear you fine,
okay.
Yeah.
So most of our adult-sized life, I've been bigger than Darcy, but I have never been stronger than him.
Right.
I've never been able to take him physically in anything. But this moment, I shoved my brother so hard, put him into the towel dispenser, and I cut his ear. I remember it. I drew blood. And I won that fight. Oh, man, I was proud for about 2 seconds. And then Darcy walked up and gave me a big bop on the nose. Because I don't know how to fight. I can't.
Right.
Like, you could have seen this punch coming from a mile away, and all I did was lead with my nose. He got me pretty good, tore my shirt. And one of us took off. I can't remember. It was probably me. Ran off to the campsite. And thinking back on it, there was one of the custodians was cleaning the bathroom and witnessed all of this, and he just was standing there in all what was going on. It was a bloody battle, the bloody battle of Bighorn. So I think back on that. That was literally the last fight my brother and I ever had, like fight or argument. We didn't heal quickly. It was like a pretty long day in the back of the car after that.
What choice do you have?
Yeah. It kind of cemented our relationship, though.
It's either going to cement it or really cause a rift, I guess. But I don't know. Boys seem to forgive and forget easier than so I've been told from the ladies.
I think so.
I'm not implying it.
Yeah.
Tread lightly, Ben.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a few battles throughout the years, but that was a pretty memorable one. Yeah.
As always, Garth, it's been a very interesting conversation again. Thank you again so much. And last question as we start to wrap things up. And I know you've listened to quite a few of these, so you know this is coming. If you're sitting here as someone completely interesting, if you had to recommend someone for this podcast, who would you want to sit across from?
Well, I've thought a lot about this question because I listened to your podcast. I knew this question was coming. I was kind of like, to tell you the truth, Ben, I was surprised that you asked me on this podcast because I think I know my limits. I'm not the most interesting person around. Like I love to be in my pajamas and in bed by 9 o'clock. And like, yeah, that's what are we going to talk about on this podcast? But I do like to surround myself with interesting people, right? But I've come across someone fairly new to our community.
Okay.
And I've come across him the past few months. And he is someone really completely interesting. His name is Karim Abbasi.
Okay.
And he is passionate about science. So in his short time in our community, he started, he's now the president of the St. Paul STEM and STEAM. Oh, I'm going to get the last part wrong. The STEM and STEAM organization anyway. So STEM and STEAM is in like science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And he really wants an opportunity for kids that are interested in that area to have an outlet for it in our community. Mm-hmm. I think for a small community, we're really good at providing sports for our kids, like such a variety of sports, right? Yeah. Not just sports, but like physical activities. Like there's dance and there's obviously hockey and indoor soccer now, and like it's all there. But he recognized that this was something kind of missing in our community. Mm-hmm. So right now my kids are enrolled in it's Minecraft for Education. It's an after-school program.
Okay.
And Karim called me after the first meeting and really wanted to know how did it go and what do I see for this area growing for our community. He's got this group going. He's got he's reached out to the schools to start like a science fair activity, and he really wants people to be as passionate about science as he is. So he's definitely someone completely interesting.
Well, you've certainly piqued my interest now, because now I want to find out more about where he came from and why this is such a passion too. So you might have to maybe do us a little favor and plant the seed that maybe he might want to come on.
Sure, I can do that.
We'll get the word out there. So once again, good friend of mine, Garth Finlay, thank you so much again for joining me on this podcast. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give us a like and subscribe on your favorite podcast provider. You can find us by searching Poolin Radio or Now for Someone Completely Interesting. Once again, my guest, Garth Finlay.
Thank you.